Rafe, as I say, is a royal expert as well, so this is quite convenient and helpful for us because welcome to the show, Rafe, by the way. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo from the New Culture Forum. What we just learnt, Rafe, is that Meghan Markle's dad, Thomas, has gone into intensive care after being rushed to hospital for emergency surgery near his home in the Philippines. He moved to the Philippines some time ago with his son, Thomas Markle Jr., who's come on this show several times while they've been out there. Thomas Markle Jr., in my last conversation with him, it was a couple of months ago, said that he feared this might be his dad's last Christmas, and like so many of the rest of us, lamented the fact that Meghan hasn't talked to her poor old dad, who's now, I think, about 81, yes, since just before the wedding, their fairy tale wedding, because Thomas Markle Jr. was living in Mexico then, had the temerity to pose for some pictures and talk to the press, and she didn't like that, and she hasn't spoken to him since. I know he's very heartbroken about this. Meghan's busy all over the telly right now. Family Christmas. She's just released her dreadful seasonal special of With Love Meghan, a load of cooking and making Christmas crackers. And it's a time of year for family and friends. Well, not for her family, because she hasn't spoken to her brother Thomas Markle, or her sister Samantha Markle, or her father Thomas Markle Sr. for something like 6-7 years. Hasn't spoken to them at all. They've been completely cut off. One would hope, Rafe, that at this time, this critical time for a man who's suffered, I believe now, a heart attack and 2 strokes, and is in hospital, having undergone serious surgery in the Philippines, one would hope that Meghan would finally call her dad. What do you think?
I think hope is the right word for it. I mean, we know that they've been estranged, but there surely is no other time more pertinent to be with your father than on his, potentially on his deathbed. And his doctors have said that his life is in imminent danger. And as you quite rightly said, Meghan has put out this new sort of commercial Christmas film or documentary. This time of Christmas, more than any other, is a time to be with your family, with your loved ones. Thomas Markle, who, as you say, is 81, he long feared he would never get to see his grandchildren within his lifetime. I would say it behooves now Meghan to make sure that doesn't happen, to at least go there on her own. Ideally go there with her children so that they can actually meet their grandfather, and who knows what effect that might even have on him, although obviously things are so dire for him at that moment. This is a man who clearly, as you said, he's done nothing wrong. He simply was a person who wasn't really au fait, wasn't used to dealing with the paparazzi. He made a deal he thought made sense, and he's been punished ever more for that by a couple who seem to think that they are the epitome of tolerance and love and understanding. Well, we judge people by how they treat those nearest to them, and in this respect, obviously, they'll be both found hugely failing. I think it will be unforgivable if Meghan doesn't go to her father's bedside at this most dramatic time, and of course her popularity with the public would soar if she did that.
You're absolutely right, Rafe, but I suspect, knowing her, it's a forlorn hope. Don't forget that Thomas Markle Sr. and Meghan were very close when they were kids. He was a lighting man in Hollywood, quite, was quite well-to-do, quite financially comfortable, so he brought her up in some style, and they were very close. And I know he's heartbroken because Thomas Markle Jr., his son, is a friend of this show, comes on a lot, and he gets very angry about it. Now, you've got to examine the weirdness of the way this has unfolded. Now, since that fallout, as you so rightly say, due to a man who doesn't understand the media, frankly, he got conned by a sharp-talking paparazzi guy into posing for some stupid pictures that said a few things. Look, You know, I'm in the business. I know how it goes. If people don't know what they're doing when they're confronted by the media, they tend to get talked into doing things they regret. And that's what happened here. She's shown no forgiveness for this. Hasn't spoken to him since. And here's the weirdness. And of course, because of that, he didn't go to her wedding, their wedding, the fairy tale wedding back in, was it 2018 in Windsor? And this is the weirdness of it, Rafe. Harry has never, ever met his father-in-law, and as you just alluded to, of course, Lilibet and Archie, the two kids, have never met him either. And I know from talking to Thomas Markle Jr., his great hope is to see his grandchildren before he passes on from this existence, from this life. And perhaps now, maybe, just maybe, at least he might see his daughter again. I hope she does this because, as I say, I actually watched the festive edition of With Love Meghan today. That's 60 minutes out of my life I'll never get back. And it's full of, when your family come and you make them the food that they love to show how much you love them. I mean, the hypocrisy oozed out of every pore of that programme. She needs to do something finally, show some humanity about her poor old dad at this time. Thomas Markle's saying it's a blood clot on his brain, and the doctors have told him that his dad is in, and I quote, his life is in imminent danger. Get on the phone, Meghan, at the very least.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. And I would say, you know, you can tell that the level of insincerity and performative art around much of Meghan's appearance of being loving and accepting and tolerant to others, of course, with relation to her father. But of course, I would hope that Prince Harry is trying to at least be some sort of force for good in this. We know, of course, now he seemingly regrets the distance, the chasm between him and his father. We know the king, of course, still undergoing cancer treatment. Prince Harry went immediately to his father's side. Well, not immediately, but very soon after that diagnosis. Right. To see him. He surely should be one of those saying to Meghan, come on, put this to the side. This is a time for forgiveness and a time for family. I mean, if I were Harry, I would go there on my own, actually, to my father-in-law's bedside to try to act as some sort of mediator and see if something can be brokered at this very late stage. It's all very tragic, and it's also terribly superficial and unnecessary on the part of the Sussexes.
Now, she carries on as she always has, and I know, having spoken to Thomas Markle Jr., that what the family consider is that, you know, she is one of the world's most enthusiastic social mountaineers, and she's reached the top of the social ladder in her view. She's got a royal title, she's married to a prince, and Thomas Markle and Samantha Markle, indeed Thomas Markle Sr., think that maybe they're just a bit too blue-collar for her these days. They don't fit in with her new prestigious and snobbish new life. That's what they feel. Well, if she does not do something, at least, the very least, phone him or something, the world will see, I think, a very heartless woman. You've got to phone your dad, Meghan. It looks like, you know, he's in deep trouble. He really is. As Thomas Markle said, Thomas Markle Jr. said, he suffered a heart attack, two strokes, and he's just been through an earthquake. Thomas Markle Jr. saying, well, I hope he survives this. But the doctors have told him his life is in imminent danger. So we wish Thomas Markle Sr. all the very best, and we hope that Meghan shows some humanity in his hour of need. Well, let's move on to what I wanted to get you on about in the first place, Rafe. And I want to talk about wokery, if I can. And this is Jaguar, you remember, had this weird rebrand. Suddenly, the stylish, classic British car that we've all known and loved, Prestige motor, was rebranded with this weird pink advert and all these strange models and these concept cars that didn't really look anything like Jaguar at all. That one's not pink, but there were some pink ones as well. Look at that. I mean, and then there are some very strange models, and they basically said, you know, be different, don't go with the crowd, or something like that. And ever since then, Jaguar's fortunes have gone into free fall. The company's in turmoil. Anyway, on Monday, the guy who was behind the reimagined Jaguar event, which was at the Miami Art Week in December 24. He's a guy called Jerry McGovern. Apparently, according to reports, he was marched out of the office because Jaguar had realised this is a disaster. My question to you is, why do companies do this? We saw it with Bud Light in America, where they hired Dylan Mulvaney, a bloke in a dress who calls himself a woman, and they thought, oh, this will make us groovy. Bud Light is the working man's blue-collar beer, biggest beer in America, owned by a huge company called Anheuser-Busch. This rebrand was so disastrous for Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch that the company nearly went bankrupt. They had to rapidly come up with a new commercial with good old boys drinking it on the back of a veranda in the deep south, and they just about survived. But, you know, we can all see what Jaguar did, what Bud Light did. We can all see it's mad, and yet they do it. It's a sort of self-harming corporate wokery. In other words, it's like corporations get infected by the woke mind virus and self-harm by rebranding in a way that they think is modern but just alienates their customers. Why do they do it?
They do it simply because, as you said, they've been victim to the long march through the institutions as everyone else has. This has happened because, of course, people who are now in these woke corporations have been educated and have gone through the far left indoctrination camps, or the woke madrasas that I call our modern universities. And they've come out of that radicalized, and they've gone into HR departments in corporations, which have embedded a lot of this nonsense about DEI and ESG and corporate responsibility. And the older people, the CEOs and others, feel that their company will be judged if they're not deemed to be progressive and woke. So we call this now woke capitalism. This is the new prevailing orthodoxy in the corporate world. Milton Friedman, the great economist, famously said that the only concern of a corporation is creating profit for its shareholders. Well, that's gone right out of the window. Now you have what's called stakeholder capitalism. You have to consider the environment. You have to consider the lifestyle of people who might be in the vicinity of one of your manufacturing places. I mean, all sorts of nonsense with regards to what the duties and obligations and fiduciary duties are of a corporation. It's also the case that what happened, particularly say in this country, but also in America, is around 2011, the coalition government with Vince Cable as leading the charge for business brought in this document called Women on Board, and they said, well, we must have more women represented on our boards. Never mind the fact that there weren't enough qualified women in corporations to come on these boards. we need to have representation. And so suddenly all of these very well qualified men were skipped over for promotion, and there were a lot of women who simply weren't ready yet for promotion to these high levels, and they came on the boards. I mean, the most obvious example in recent times was Dame Sharon Rose, I think her name was, who was the CEO of John Lewis. Now, this was a woman who was previously working as a civil servant in the government, and she was parachuted into heading up one of our most successful and biggest corporations with none of that experience. And what a surprise, she became the short-lived CEO in history, was beginning to drive the company into the ground, profits completely hemorrhaging. And, you know, I've no proof of this, but of course the fact that she was black and a woman may have played a role in that. Difficult to see a white male from the civil service being put into that sort of a role. And since she's gone, the business has returned to productivity. Again, this is the prioritization of identity over excellence and competence.
And do you remember Nike, not so long ago, a couple of years back, to advertise their new range of sports bras, used blokes, what they call them, trans women, you know, blokes in dresses. Now, these are sports bras. You would have thought, well, the logical route to promote this wonderful product would be women, because you don't actually manufacture or create sports bras for blokes, do you? But they had to get trans women, men. And also, this was a shocking one, I thought. This was Costa Coffee. You may remember, again, not so long ago, 2023, a couple of years ago, they get Costa Coffee, and they got this sort of Art Deco-y type image, and it's a Costa Coffee, Costa Express, and it's a sort of guy, like a surfer dude, and he's got a coffee there, and you look at him and he's got mastectomy scars. So this is a woman who's had her breasts taken off to look like a man, and they're on this advert with mastectomy scars. What is that about? That's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it just boggles the mind that here you have multi-billion-pound corporations making themselves deliberately poorer, hurting themselves in order to advance a far-left ideology. I mean, we now have CEOs of companies used to be, within our living memory, you know, like generals, like field marshals leading forward their corporations without fear, progressing onwards. Now they seem to be beholden to the sorts of ridiculous gobbledygook you only heard in sort of the Ivy League towers in academia, things you learn at Berkeley University or at SOAS or the LSE. These concepts have infiltrated, and it seems as if the CEOs today are forever taking the knee rather than standing up for their companies and leading forward, and they're so fearful of the online reaction to whatever they do, not realizing that actually that only 8% of the country identifies as far left. The majority of the country know that this is all nonsense. They can see it's nonsense. A lot of this is also performative as well. Places like Costa and others, I think, they put out these adverts thinking, well, this will convince people that we're being woke without actually doing any fundamental changes to the company. This is called woke washing, a way to appear being progressive when actually you're just putting out some very outrageous and outlandish adverts and publicity.
Yeah,
but
they assume that, as you implied just now, Rafe, that they assume that we all love wokery. It just makes me wonder what goes on in the boardrooms. Right? Okay, we've got any good ideas about how to promote our coffee? Yeah, let's get a guy or a girl with some mastectomy scars on, pretending to be a boy. How are we going to promote these new sports bras? Let's get some blokes to promote them. This is almost disturbing, this thought process. And, we reasonably normal people in Civvy Street, we look at this, as soon as these commercials come out, we go, well, that's going to cause serious trouble. Oh, I see. The face of Bud Light, the beer of good old boys down in the deep south, is now a trans woman. Oh, what could possibly go wrong? Oh, Jaguar, get rid of the old classic cars. Let's get some weird looking models. Oh, that's going to work. Mastectomy scars, sports, but it's almost disturbing that they can't see what, I'm trying to think of a better way of putting this, but what normal people can see.
But this is exactly the same mentality that saw them completely befuddled when we won the Brexit vote. It's exactly the same mentality when Trump got elected. The ruling elites of all these institutions simply couldn't understand it, because within their echo chamber, within W1, within the Wall Street, what's the Madison Avenue in New York or wherever, these views predominate. And also what you find, of course, this has happened for the last 10 years now, young recruits into these corporations have been mentoring the older people in these institutions, rather than actually going the other way around and the experienced people teaching the younger people. They've been taken on a journey. So the young have indoctrinated the older established figures within these corporations. And this is the only correct way to think. This is the progressive way. And so what they've done, Jaguar, classic example. Jaguar isn't Tesla. Right, Tesla is a futuristic brand, so you would expect them to come up with this sort of a thing. Jaguar, it's natural for a heritage brand to evolve, but it hasn't evolved, it's had a revolution. and has discarded everything to do with its past. Same thing again with Bud Light. Bud Light was framed around the frat boy, used to be called redneck soda.
Yeah.
And what do to your core elements? You basically bring aboard exactly the type of person who would repulse.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're right, Rafe. You touched upon it. It's the advertising industry, which in my youth used to be a ruthless business aimed at one thing: flogging products. Now, their aim seems to be to impose on long-suffering customers a kind of woke ideology. You know, what we know that fact is it that I think something like 7% of British people are people of colour, and yet in TV commercials 40% of people are people of colour. You know, there's the adverts now seem to be promoting an ideology and painting a picture that these young groovy executives on Madison Avenue and over here in London want to paint. This is what they want the world to be like, as opposed to what the world is actually like. And I think that distorted picture, that distorted vision is counterproductive. People are repelled by these adverts and don't buy the products.
Well, Michael Jordan, the famous American basketball player, put it very well. He was asked, why doesn't he get involved in any of these social justice campaigns? Why wasn't he vocal at BLM and the political issue? And he said, because conservatives buy sneakers too. And that, he understood. Why would I alienate the majority, perhaps, of the purchasing public by taking a stance? I mean, it doesn't make any commercial sense. This is why this is such a ridiculous thing. Corporations and advertisers should get out of the world of politics if they want to maximize their profits. That's one of the reasons you've got BBC and Channel 4 with declining viewing figures and people not willing to pay the license fee because, you know, we never knew what the two Ronnies thought about politics. We never knew what any of the historic, you know, celebrities thought about anything.
Right. Exactly. Right.
But once you do, you immediately divide people. And so suddenly the BBC has lost a core part of its audience, particularly because older people watch the BBC and they're now leaving it because they don't want to have to see, you know, lesbians in wheelchairs in every soap opera that they go and see. Nothing against lesbians in wheelchairs. If you want to have one or two, that's fine. But when every show seems to think it has to meet the quotas for everything,
exactly,
you do get the impression. And actually, we just had polling out showing that ethnic minorities feel that white people are underrepresented in these sorts of things, advertising and television and so forth.
Because they sort of are.
Because they are. No, because they are.
They project a distorted image of what Britain, and I'm sure it's the same in the States, what these countries are actually like. That isn't going to sell your products. It's again, it's insane. Who can work it out? But I think we've gone some way to doing it, Rafe. And thank you very much for your help with Meghan Markle, but also with the curse of corporate wokery, the brilliant new culture.